My name is Ella Jackson. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of when my parents said I would never amount to anything. Then I showed them my 500K business. For years, I heard the same words over and over again. You're not smart enough. You'll never make it. Stop dreaming and be realistic. Those words cut deep, deeper than any physical wound ever could. They came from the two people who were supposed to believe in me the most, and instead, they became my biggest doubters. But here's the thing. Sometimes the people who doubt you the most end up giving you the greatest motivation to prove them wrong. If you've ever felt like giving up, hit that subscribe button and like this video, because what I'm about to share might just change your perspective on failure and success. I still remember the exact moment when everything changed. I was sitting in my childhood bedroom, 25 years old, broke, and feeling like a complete failure. My parents, Richard and Margaret Jackson, had just finished another lecture about how I needed to get a real job and stop chasing impossible dreams. My mom looked at me with this mixture of pity and disappointment that I'll never forget. My dad just shook his head and walked away, like he'd given up on me entirely. That night, staring at the ceiling, I made a promise to myself, a promise that would change everything. The pain of that rejection wasn't new. It was something I'd carried since I was a teenager. Every report card, every achievement, every small win I brought home was met with criticism instead of celebration. B+ isn't good enough, my father would say, tossing my report card aside. My mother would compare me to my cousin Sarah, who was studying to be a doctor, as if my dreams meant nothing. I wanted to start my own business, to create something meaningful, but they saw it as foolish. You won't believe what happened next, because that rejection became the fuel that ignited a fire inside me that nobody could put out. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been told by your own family that you're not good enough? That your dreams are too big, too unrealistic, too impossible? If you have, then you know exactly what I'm talking about. This video is for everyone who's ever felt underestimated, overlooked, or completely dismissed by the people who should have been their biggest cheerleaders. My story isn't just about building a 500K business. It's about the journey from rock bottom to the top, from being told I was nothing to proving I was everything they said I couldn't be. And if you're watching this right now feeling stuck or doubted, smash that like button and subscribe, because I want you to know that you're not alone in this fight. Growing up in a middle-class family in Ohio, I always thought my parents wanted the best for me. Richard worked as an accountant, and Margaret was a school administrator. Both practical, safe careers. They valued stability over passion, security over risk. To them, success meant following a traditional path. Good grades, college degree, corporate job, retirement plan. But I was different. I saw the world through a lens of possibilities, not limitations. I wanted to create, to innovate, to build something that was mine. But every time I shared my ideas, I was met with skepticism and discouragement. Ella, be realistic, became the soundtrack of my teenage years. The emotional weight of constantly feeling like I wasn't enough took its toll. I started doubting myself, questioning my abilities, wondering if maybe they were right. Maybe I was just a dreamer with no real talent or potential. The worst part wasn't the words themselves. It was the feeling that the two people who brought me into this world didn't believe I could make anything of it. But here's what I learned. Sometimes the people who love you the most are also the ones who fear for you the most, and that fear can come out as doubt. But that's when things took a turn I never saw coming, because I was about to make a decision that would change everything. There's one specific memory that still haunts me to this day, a moment that defined everything that came after. I was 22 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in business administration that I'd worked 3 jobs to pay for. I had this brilliant idea, at least I thought it was brilliant, to start an online platform connecting local artisans with customers who valued handmade, authentic products. I'd spent months researching, creating a business plan, designing mock-ups, and I was so excited to share it with my parents. If you've ever had that one moment where everything fell apart, hit that like button and subscribe, because I want to hear your story too. Drop it in the comments and let's build a community of people who refuse to stay down. I remember sitting at the dinner table, my laptop open, my heart racing with excitement and nervousness. Richard sat there with his arms crossed, that familiar look of skepticism already on his face before I'd even started. Margaret was doing the dishes, barely paying attention as I began my presentation. I showed them everything, the market research, the potential profit margins, the testimonials from artisans who were already interested. I spoke with passion, with conviction, with hope. But when I finished, the silence was deafening. My father leaned back in his chair, let out a long sigh, and said words that would echo in my mind for years. Ella, this is a waste of time. You need to get a real job, not chase these silly fantasies. My mother turned around, wiping her hands on a dish towel, and added, "Honey, your father's right. We didn't pay for your education so you could play entrepreneur. Sarah just got accepted into her medical residency. Now that's a real career." The comparison to my cousin Sarah again, like a knife twisting in an old wound. I felt my eyes burning with tears, but I refused to let them fall, not in front of them. I closed my laptop, mumbled something about them not understanding, and retreated to my room. That night, I felt smaller than I'd ever felt in my life, like all my dreams had been crushed under the weight of their disappointment. But what they didn't know was that their rejection was about to plant a seed that would grow into something they never expected. Here's the thing about rejection. It can either break you or make you. And I'll be honest, for a few weeks after that dinner table disaster, I was broken. I questioned everything. My abilities, my judgment, my dreams, even my worth as a person. Maybe they were right, I thought. Maybe I was just being naive and unrealistic. I applied to a few corporate jobs, went to some interviews, tried to fit into the mold they wanted me to fit into. But every time I sat in one of those sterile office buildings, listening to someone talk about quarterly reports and performance metrics, I felt my soul dying a little bit more. That's when something inside me shifted, a tiny spark that would soon become a raging fire. I was lying in bed one night, scrolling through social media, and I came across a quote that stopped me cold. "The best revenge is massive success." Those 5 words hit me like a lightning bolt. I sat up, my heart pounding, and suddenly everything became crystal clear. My parents' rejection wasn't a sign that I should give up. It was fuel. It was ammunition. It was the challenge I needed to prove, not just to them, but to myself, that I was capable of more than they could ever imagine. I realized something powerful that night. I had been seeking their approval my entire life, and that approval had become my prison. But what if I stopped caring about their approval and started caring about my own vision? The next morning, I woke up with a fire inside me that I'd never felt before. I looked at myself in the mirror and made a declaration. I'm going to build this business, and I'm going to make it so successful that they'll have no choice but to see what I'm capable of. Their doubt became my motivation. Their criticism became my fuel. Every "you can't" turned into "watch me." I started working on my business plan with the intensity I'd never had before, fueled not by their encouragement, but by their disbelief. Psychology tells us that sometimes our greatest achievements come from proving others wrong, and I was about to become living proof of that. You won't believe what I did next, because I was about to take a risk that would either make me or break me forever. The decision to change my life didn't come with fireworks or a dramatic movie moment. It came quietly, in the middle of the night, with a notebook and a pen. I decided right then and there that I was done living my life according to someone else's script, even if that someone was my own parents. I was going to build my business, and I was going to do it my way, with or without their support. That decision was terrifying and liberating at the same time, like jumping off a cliff and discovering you could fly. If you've ever made a decision that changed your entire life trajectory, make sure you hit that subscribe button and like this video. I want to know what moment changed everything for you, so drop it in the comments below. I spent the next 3 days locked in my room, barely sleeping, barely eating, just planning and strategizing. I rewrote my entire business plan, but this time it wasn't about impressing anyone or getting approval. It was about creating something I truly believed in. I called my platform Artisan Connect, and the concept was simple but powerful. Connecting talented craftspeople with customers who appreciated authentic, handmade products in a world drowning in mass-produced garbage. I researched my competitors, identified gaps in the market, and created a step-by-step launch strategy. I also made a promise to myself. I would give this everything I had for the next 2 years, and if it failed, at least I'd know I tried. The hardest part of this decision wasn't the fear of failure. It was accepting that I might have to do this alone. I realized my parents weren't going to suddenly change their minds and become my cheerleaders. I had to find validation from within, not from external sources. I started following successful entrepreneurs online, reading books about business and mindset, surrounding myself with content that lifted me up instead of tearing me down. I found a quote by Steve Jobs that became my mantra. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. I printed it out and stuck it on my wall, right where I could see it every morning. This was my turning point, the moment where I stopped being a victim of other people's opinions and started being the author of my own story. But the road ahead was about to test me in ways I never imagined. Starting a business with no money, no connections, and no support is like trying to climb a mountain barefoot in a snowstorm. My first major challenge was funding. I had exactly $247 in my savings account, which was barely enough to build a basic website, let alone launch a full platform. I couldn't ask my parents for money. That bridge had been burned. I couldn't get a traditional bank loan because I had no collateral and no proven track record. So I did what desperate entrepreneurs do. I worked 3 jobs simultaneously. I waitressed at a diner in the mornings, did freelance graphic design in the afternoons, and drove for a rideshare company at night. I slept maybe 4 hours a night, living on coffee and determination. Every day felt like a battle against exhaustion and self-doubt. There were mornings when I'd wake up and think, maybe my parents were right. Maybe this is too hard. Maybe I should just give up and get a normal job. But then I'd remember that dinner table conversation, the look of disappointment in their eyes, and something inside me would refuse to quit. I spent 6 months working like this, saving every single penny I could. I lived on ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I gave up going out with friends, buying new clothes, doing anything that wasn't directly contributing to my goal. My friends thought I was crazy. My parents thought I was wasting my life. But I could see something they couldn't. I could see the finish line. The loneliness was the hardest part. When you're chasing a dream that nobody else believes in, you feel incredibly isolated. I'd be driving strangers around at midnight, listening to them talk about their normal lives, their normal problems, and I'd feel like an alien. I didn't fit into their world anymore, but I hadn't yet created my own. I was stuck in this in-between space, this limbo of uncertainty. There were nights when I'd sit in my car after dropping off a passenger and just cry from exhaustion and frustration. But I never quit. Not once. Because I knew that quitting would mean proving them right, and I'd rather die trying than live knowing I gave up. And then, something incredible started to happen that would change everything. After 8 months of grinding, of sacrificing everything, of working until my body wanted to give up, I finally launched Artisan Connect. The website went live on a Tuesday morning in March, and I sat there refreshing the page every 5 minutes, terrified that nobody would sign up. But then something magical happened. My first artisan registered. Her name was Linda, a 54-year-old potter from Vermont who made the most beautiful ceramic bowls I'd ever seen. She sent me an email thanking me for creating the platform, saying she'd been looking for something like this for years. I cried reading that email. Not sad tears, but tears of validation. If this story is resonating with you, smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. I want to build a community of people who refuse to let doubt win, so comment below and tell me about your first small victory. Within the first week, I had 23 artisans signed up and 147 customers browsing the platform. The numbers were small, but to me, they were everything. Each notification, each new registration, each sale felt like a tiny victory against everyone who said this wouldn't work. I made my first commission 2 weeks after launch, 47s. It wasn't much, but I printed out that payment confirmation and put it on my wall next to the Steve Jobs quote. That $47 represented so much more than money. It represented proof of concept, validation, that my idea had merit. I called my best friend Jessica, the only person who had believed in me from the start, and we celebrated with cheap champagne and pizza. The momentum started building slowly but steadily. By the end of month 2, I had 89 artisans and over 600 customers. My monthly revenue was around $2,300, which meant I was finally making enough to quit one of my 3 jobs. I chose to quit the rideshare driving because those midnight shifts were killing me. Having even a few extra hours of sleep felt like luxury. The artisans started leaving reviews, telling their friends, creating this organic word-of-mouth marketing that I couldn't have paid for. One woodworker named Tom from Colorado told me that my platform had helped him make more money in 1 month than he'd made in the previous 6 months combined. These stories fueled me, reminded me why I started this in the first place. But just when things started looking up, doubt came knocking at my door again, and this time it hit harder than ever before. Success is never a straight line. It's a messy, chaotic roller coaster that tests you at every turn. Month 4 hit me like a truck. My website crashed during a major promotional campaign, and I lost thousands of dollars in potential sales. I didn't have the money to hire a professional developer to fix it, so I spent 3 days teaching myself code through YouTube videos, barely sleeping, surviving on energy drinks and panic. I got the site back up, but the damage was done. Some artisans left for competing platforms, customers complained, and my rating dropped. I felt like everything I'd built was crumbling, and the voice of my father echoed in my head. This is a waste of time. The self-doubt was suffocating. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, calculating how much money I'd lost, how much time I'd wasted, wondering if I was just proving my parents right. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this. Maybe I didn't have what it takes. Maybe I should just give up while I still had some dignity left. I stopped answering Jessica's calls because I didn't want to admit how badly things were going. I stopped posting updates on social media because I didn't want people to see me fail. The isolation was crushing, and for the first time since I started this journey, I seriously considered quitting. I even started updating my resume, looking at job postings, preparing to wave the white flag. But then something unexpected happened that pulled me back from the edge. Linda, the potter from Vermont, who was my first artisan, sent me a care package. Inside was one of her beautiful ceramic bowls and a handwritten note that said, "Ella, I don't know what you're going through, but I can feel your energy has changed. Don't give up. You've created something special here, and there are hundreds of us who believe in you, even if you don't believe in yourself right now." I sat on my floor holding that bowl and crying like a baby. That moment reminded me that I wasn't just building a business. I was building a community, and that community needed me to keep going. The doubt didn't disappear completely, but it got quieter, and I found the strength to push forward. What happened next would test me even more, but it would also lead me to the breakthrough I'd been desperately seeking. Month 6 brought the breakthrough I'd been praying for, and it came from the most unexpected place. I received an email from a journalist named Marcus Chen who wrote for a major lifestyle magazine. He'd discovered Artisan Connect while shopping for a birthday gift and was fascinated by the concept. He wanted to write a feature article about the platform and interview me about my journey. My hands were shaking as I read that email. This was the kind of exposure that could change everything. If you're watching this and thinking about giving up on your dreams, hit that subscribe button and like this video right now, because I'm about to show you how one opportunity can transform your entire life, and I want you to stick around to see what's possible when you refuse to quit. The interview happened over video call on a rainy Thursday afternoon. Marcus asked me deep questions about why I started the business, what challenges I'd faced, and what my vision was for the future. For the first time, I opened up about my parents' rejection, about the dinner table conversation that almost destroyed me, about using their doubt as fuel. Marcus was genuinely moved by my story, and I could see in his eyes that he understood what this meant to me. He told me the article would publish in 3 weeks, and I spent those 3 weeks in anxious anticipation, barely able to focus on anything else. I didn't tell anyone about the article, not even Jessica, because I was terrified of jinxing it. When the article finally published, my world exploded overnight. The headline read, "How One Woman Turned Family Rejection into a Thriving Business Connecting Artisans with the World." Within 24 hours, my website traffic increased by 4,000%. My email inbox was flooded with messages from artisans wanting to join, customers wanting to shop, and even investors wanting to talk. I had to temporarily shut down new registrations because my servers couldn't handle the traffic. I stayed up for 36 hours straight, responding to emails, fixing technical issues, trying to manage this tsunami of attention. That article didn't just give me exposure. It validated everything I'd sacrificed, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. But what came next would prove that this was just the beginning of something extraordinary. The 6 months following that article were the most intense period of my life. Artisan Connect went from a small platform with under 100 artisans to a thriving marketplace with over 1,200 artisans from 37 different states. My monthly revenue jumped from around $8,000 to $64,000 in just 3 months. I had to quit my remaining 2 jobs and work on the business full-time, which was both terrifying and exhilarating. For the first time in my life, I was making real money doing something I loved, something I'd built with my own hands. The numbers on my bank account started looking like numbers I'd only dreamed about, and I had to keep checking to make sure they were real. I hired my first employee, a developer named Ryan, who helped me rebuild the platform to handle the increased traffic. Then I hired Sarah, not my cousin Sarah, but a marketing specialist named Sarah Rodriguez, who understood social media and digital marketing in ways I never could. We worked out of my tiny apartment, sitting on folding chairs around a card table, but it felt like we were building something important, something meaningful. The artisans were thriving. Tom, the woodworker from Colorado, bought a new workshop with his earnings. Linda, the potter, was able to quit her day job and focus on her craft full-time. Their success stories became my success stories, and that's when I realized I wasn't just running a business. I was changing lives. By month 12, Artisan Connect hit 6 figures in monthly revenue. I moved the operation into a real office space, hired 3 more people, and started getting calls from venture capitalists wanting to invest. Some offered me millions for a stake in the company, but I turned them all down because I wanted to maintain control of my vision. By month 18, I crossed the $500,000 mark in total revenue, $500,000 that represented every sacrifice, every doubt overcome, every moment I chose to keep going when quitting would have been easier. I sat in my office one evening, looking at the financial reports, and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. That girl who was told she'd never amount to anything had just built a $500,000 business from scratch. But the real test was still ahead. facing the people who never believed in me in the first place. I hadn't spoken to my parents in almost 2 years. After that disastrous dinner table conversation, our relationship had become strained and distant. They'd call occasionally, asking when I was going to get a real job, and I'd give vague answers and end the call as quickly as possible. I didn't tell them about Artisan Connect, about the magazine article, about any of my success. Part of me wanted to protect myself from their potential criticism, and part of me was saving it all for the right moment. That moment came when my mom called to invite me to Thanksgiving dinner. My cousin Sarah would be there with her new doctor fiancé, and Margaret made it clear she expected me to come and see what real success looks like. That invitation stung, but it also presented the perfect opportunity. I accepted, telling her I'd be there and that I had some news to share. The 2 weeks leading up to Thanksgiving were nerve-wracking. I kept rehearsing what I'd say, how I'd present my success, imagining their reactions. Would they be proud? Would they apologize? Would they even care? I had my business financial statements printed and organized in a folder, along with the magazine article and testimonials from artisans whose lives I'd changed. I bought a new outfit, got my hair done, and prepared myself mentally for what could be either a moment of triumph or another devastating rejection. Driving to their house on Thanksgiving Day, my heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. I pulled up to the familiar driveway, the same house where I'd grown up, where I'd been told countless times I wasn't good enough. I sat in my car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, taking deep breaths. This was it, the moment I'd been working toward for 2 years. I grabbed my folder, stepped out of the car, and walked toward the front door. I had no idea that the next few hours would be more emotionally intense than anything I'd experienced on my entrepreneurial journey, and that the truth about my parents' doubt would finally be revealed in a way I never expected. The moment I walked through the door, I could feel the familiar tension. My cousin Sarah was there with her fiancé David, both looking polished and perfect. Richard shook my hand stiffly, and Margaret gave me a quick hug before rushing back to the kitchen. Sarah immediately started talking about her residency program, about the complex surgeries she was observing, clearly showing off. My parents hung on her every word, nodding with pride, asking detailed questions. I sat there quietly, sipping wine, waiting for my moment. After dinner, when everyone was settling into the living room, my father asked his usual condescending question. "So Ella, are you still chasing those dreams, or have you finally gotten a real job?" The room went quiet. Sarah smirked. Margaret looked at me with that familiar mixture of pity and disappointment. But this time, I didn't shrink. I stood up, walked over to my bag, pulled out my folder, and placed it on the coffee table. "Actually, Dad, I want to show you something," I said, my voice steady and calm. I opened the folder and spread out the documents. The financial statements showing $500,000 in revenue, the magazine article with my face on it, the letters from artisans thanking me for changing their lives, the photos of my office and my team. I built a business. The silly fantasy you told me to give up on, it's now worth $500,000 and growing every month. The silence that followed was deafening. Richard picked up the financial statements, his hands trembling slightly as he read through them. Margaret grabbed the magazine article, her eyes scanning the words, her mouth hanging open. Sarah's smirk disappeared, replaced by shock. My father looked up at me, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Tears. "Ella, he started, his voice breaking. Then he did something that shocked me to my core. He stood up, walked over to me, and hugged me tight. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I was wrong. I was so wrong about you." My mother joined the hug, crying, apologizing, telling me she was proud. What happened next would reveal the truth behind their years of doubt, and it would change everything I thought I knew about my family. That night, after the shock wore off and everyone calmed down, my father sat me down and told me something I never knew. He explained that his harsh words and constant discouragement weren't because he didn't believe in me, they were because he was terrified for me. Richard had tried to start his own business in his 20s, a small consulting firm, and it had failed spectacularly, leaving him in debt for years. That failure had broken something inside him, made him afraid of risk, made him choose the safe path of accounting and stability. He projected that fear onto me, trying to protect me from the pain he'd experienced, but instead, he almost destroyed my dreams. If this story has touched your heart, please hit that subscribe button and like this video. Share your own story of overcoming family doubt in the comments, because I truly believe we're stronger together. Understanding my parents' motivation didn't erase the pain of those years, but it did help me see them as human beings with their own fears and failures, not just as obstacles I had to overcome. My mother confessed that she'd always compared me to Sarah, because she thought it would motivate me to work harder, not realizing it was crushing my spirit instead. They both admitted they were wrong, that their approach had been damaging, and that they should have supported my dreams instead of trying to kill them. That conversation was healing in ways I didn't expect. I realized that forgiveness isn't about forgetting the hurt. It's about understanding the story behind the hurt and choosing to move forward. The journey from that dinner table rejection to building a 500K business taught me lessons that no business school could ever teach. I learned that other people's limitations don't have to become your limitations. I learned that the loudest doubters often become your biggest motivators if you channel that energy correctly. I learned that success isn't just about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right, about validating your own vision and trusting your own instincts. Most importantly, I learned that the opinion that matters most is your own, because you're the one who has to live with your choices, your regrets, and your victories. My parents' doubt didn't break me. It forged me into someone stronger, more resilient, more determined than I ever could have been with their unconditional support. Today, Artisan Connect has grown beyond anything I imagined that night in my childhood bedroom. We're approaching $2 million in annual revenue. We've helped over 3,000 artisans build sustainable businesses, and we've created a community of people who believe in authentic craftsmanship over mass production. My parents are now my biggest supporters. My dad even invested $50,000 into the business last year, and my mom volunteers to help with customer service during the holiday rush. Our relationship has healed in ways I never thought possible, not because of my success, but because we finally had honest conversations about fear, expectations, and love. The girl who was told she'd never amount to anything is now mentoring other young entrepreneurs, showing them that their worth isn't determined by other people's beliefs. After hearing my story, I want you to ask yourself, what would you have done in my place? Would you have given up after that dinner table rejection, or would you have used it as fuel? What's your take on turning pain into power, on using rejection as motivation? Here's what I know for sure. Every single person watching this video has been doubted by someone at some point. Maybe it was a parent, a teacher, a friend, or even yourself. But doubt only has power if you let it. You get to choose whether criticism breaks you or builds you. You get to decide if someone else's fear becomes your prison or your motivation. The greatest revenge isn't about proving them wrong. It's about proving yourself right. So here's my challenge to you. Stop waiting for permission to chase your dreams. Stop looking for validation from people who are too afraid to chase their own dreams. Start today, right now, with whatever resources you have, wherever you are. Your journey won't look like mine, and that's okay. It shouldn't. But if you take away one thing from my story, let it be this. You are capable of so much more than the people around you can see, and sometimes the only way to prove it is to stop talking and start doing. If you want more stories like this, stories of people who refuse to stay down, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Thank you for watching, thank you for being part of this community, and I'll see you in the next video. Now go out there and build something they said was impossible.